That's something that a lot of people try to do, when they're meditating, when they're doing yoga. They're trying really hard to get a spiritual connection, and yet it's very difficult. How do you feel you are able to incorporate occult and your bodies so well together?
The performance space allows you to be yourself in a way that you never feel you are outside it. It's very magical, special space. For me, magic is about things changing in the world according to your desire. This movement, it's a kind of movement, and desire is movement, and the body of pleasure is also this body of movement, because the body of pain is one of constriction. So the opposite is how you release it.
Babylon. To be honest, it's like I heard the name Babylon like once or twice before, but I didn't really know much about Babylon until I was doing research to talk to you. How did Babylon come into your life?
My first awareness of her, I didn't know she was Babylon, but it was after I had done a 10-day ayahuasca retreat. And 2 weeks later, I was in a garden in London meditating after I'd got back. And I'd been sort of raw food, vegan, completely like away with the fairies since I'd come back anyway. I was meditating in the garden, and this goddess came forward and told me a bunch of stuff, like that I would meet Peter and things like this. And I can't really say what she said because it's so personal. I was working with Kurukulla, the tantric dakini, but in a completely non-orthodox way. So I had this sort of, say, fiery, hot, sexual, feminine energy that I had started working with a couple of years previously. Then when I met Peter and I was reading The Red Goddess, that he gave me these chapters, I recognized from his descriptions and from what she was saying that the goddess I had seen 2 or 3 months previously in a kind of meditation vision was Babylon. So I got very, okay, this is, when life does a lot of crazy things all at once and says, like, just drops you there right in the storm. This is the work I have to do. After a failed suicide attempt, I made this kind of offering of myself to the energy, to Kurukulla to do, and this is what's happened. So Scarlet Imprint and the Red Goddess in Babylon, and I was working with the body anyway, but the work with the body has become so much deeper because of the work with Babylon. The issues are so much to do with the sexual energy, especially for women, and the suppression of feminine sexual energy, not female, I mean just feminine, that energy, whether it's carried in a male or a female body.
I think a lot of the audience probably either has not heard of Babylon, or just in passing, or maybe they've heard a song, like a punk song about Babylon. So is Babylon an actual, like, goddess energy? Is it a female archetype?
I don't know how people think what an archetype or a goddess is. So for me, I would say the gods move through the world like winds, and they take people and things with them, and they move through them, but with agency. They know what they're doing. So Babylon is connected with this resurgence of the feminine energy. She can be connected with the goddess Inanna and Ishtar in ancient Mesopotamia. So her roots, like the roots of the name, Babylon is in Babylon. Then she sort of migrates and becomes Aphrodite. She goes to Cyprus and sort of moves through the world. She's the same goddess, of the same energy. And she has resonant goddesses that have similar energies, this kind of particular Shakti. Yeah, it's a kind of Shakti. For me, it was very interesting because all my previous work was in fields which were like Asian, and suddenly being confronted with this energy in the West, in something that I had completely rejected from a young age, and in the Bible as well, which I was raised Catholic, and it was something I found very, very disturbing, some of the ideas that it gave. So to find this goddess, there she is in the book of Revelation.
Well, what is she exactly?
The whore.
Wow. Cass, tell us what you really think. Book of Revelation calls her the whore of Babylon.
She contains all of this ancient DNA, and she's figured there as like the absolute vessel of evil. The freedom that she brings is very disturbing for people that aren't able to hold themselves in the world. People who are not used to like being autonomous and self-creating. This is a difficult energy, and it's an energy that will cause you to come into conflict with other people. If society doesn't change, this energy will cause eruptions. Not like when I see things online, it looks like a lot of men being problematic to women who are trying to take space or use their voice or be public. And actually it's sort of incumbent upon men now to sort of step aside a bit and allow women that space and not to silence them. So we're in a bit of a, I feel it's a bit volatile at the moment. There's a lot of difficult energies going on, this negotiation, because women are not going to go back to being sort of quiet, obedient, sort of old school style idea of what femininity is.
In your essay, you beautifully wrote about how Babylon is both a destroyer energy, but also a regenerative energy. And it's like these two polarities existing in one thing. It's kind of like a neutron, it's like a uranium sort of thing. It's very unstable. It can go either way. When I was reading about Babylon, and again, I had really no knowledge of her before, I connected a lot to the way that she was portrayed as a woman in charge with agency over sexuality, somebody who painted herself, adorned herself, and also carried around a lot of masculine energy in the form of a woman. I think a lot of women can relate to that.
And this is the kind of work that women are going to have to focus on as well, to make sure that they don't take things for granted and that they actually keep these spaces and that they extend them and that they extend their voices and their words and their bodies into these.
How are you able to bridge that gap? I'm sure a lot of women feel that way. Like, I don't want to, but I want to. How do I do that?
Give yourself no alternative. You don't have a choice. We didn't know that Scarlet was going to become anything. We were total punks when we started. We did 156 copies exactly of the Red Goddess. It was like the weirdest print order ever, probably, like Y156. And it was quite an effort even to like sell through those. We were sort of like, who are you? Who's Scarlet Imprint? But then kind of things just lit up really quickly. And we had to grow with it and go from being like punks to, okay, how do I do typography and how do I make a book? And even like writing essays, I had never like written my ideas before, so I look at my early work and I'm just horrified. I'm like, oh my god, who was I? Who was this person? It was so long ago. But I think it's important. You have to go through these different like shells. You have to keep breaking out of your skin. And the only way to do that is to do stuff. There's no like waiting and you're going to hatch. No, you have to struggle. It's like the butterfly. You have to struggle in the chrysalis. As humans, we go through many chrysalises. We always trying to break out of this thing that we are into the next thing. I also realized that when Peter was asked to speak about Babylon, I said, Peter, I need to speak as well, because you can't just stand up there and say, Babylon is here, and I'm sitting next to you going like, oh wow, Peter, you're amazing, and I'm not saying anything. It would be stupid. And I also felt that I had my own understanding, that Peter has his understanding. Peter has his relationship as a man in a male body with this goddess and with this energy. And so I had to do it. I just had to. There was no choice. So I would stand up, and I think the first time he held on to me until right before I had to talk because I was going to run away. It was just like, you're doing it. But I had already said, I have to do this. Through the dance and movement principally. through sex, through the voice work I've done. So I kind of put that in the movement category too, because it's all so embodied. So through body work, really, through body work and meditation. But it's very hard to draw lines with Babylon. It feels like everything. So if I'm making a book and the book is on whatever, I still dedicate that energy to Babylon. So if something is sort of terrible and it's hard work and it's very difficult or something, just to always make offering of that and dedicate it to Babylon. And it's just this way of continually, when I feel that I can't do something, I give all my incapacity and I offer all my like poorness and poverty, and hope that this sort of emptying, she will return with strength. And she always fills me with that. It always comes through. Something always gets me through. And so to keep this dialogue always alive, we just moved to a place where we have a garden. So we have a little courtyard, and when we started putting the garden together, we made sure we had like a dance of rose bushes around an olive tree, so that they're there dancing in the wind. And just having this relationship with those plants is a very interesting way of getting closer to her. To work with rose and rose essences in cooking, in drinks, in things that you like, unguents, in self-massage with oils. Get anything that enables you to like heighten your own sensitivity and awaken this body. Self-touch is really important. Even before then you encounter the other and you touch the other. It's this like first encounter with the self, this intimacy, almost like being back in the womb, this sort of way we can become our own mothers again and enable that softness, which is where the regeneration comes from. But all the work I do is under Babylon. I think I had said before in that Occulture podcast that in the Book of Revelation she's described as the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. So for me that puts her as the sort of the head or the fount, the source of this tradition of female sexual magic and female body knowledge that goes along with the harlot. All the things like the control of the reproduction, the understanding of how to work with the menstrual cycle, especially when going into oracular or visionary states and doing dreaming work. Also, the physical sensitivity. I mean, when I'm getting premenstrual and I'm menstruating, the light has to be as low as possible, and everything hurts too much. I can only wear silk because any other sense is too, like, it becomes hot on the skin. Any other material, it's like it makes me hyper sensitive, and it was just like such a huge taboo for me, but it was really life-changing in so many ways. It was like, doing doing psychedelics. It was really intense. And so I think just like do unexpected things, challenge yourself, do things for fun, like just start feeling how you can be in the world. I've been mountain biking and doing things like this since I met Peter. I couldn't ride a bike before I met him, and then he like got me this really simple bike, and then 3 months later he pushed me down one of the Alps. He was like down a black run, and he's like, well, you have to either stay on the bike or die. Some horrific kind of thing that was very bumpy and dangerous. And I got to the bottom and my adrenaline had completely rinsed through me and I was shaking, and I picked up this rock and I threw it at him and said, why did you make me do that? You know I can't do that. And he like goes nuts. But you just did it. Look, you did it. And so, okay, I can do that. I mean, he has a particularly maybe questionable approach to teaching. I had to learn fast, so that's been my path. But I think women need to do that, maybe a little bit more safely, but they need to challenge themselves, do things which that turn them on, discover that, be that in the world, and see what that can become, because we are not static, we're not finished. We are continually creating ourselves. Beauty is something that is experienced in motion. That's why so much of my Babylon work is movement. It's something coming through you. It's an air. It's a way of holding oneself. It's grace more than anything. And it's something you experience with all your senses and not just with your eyes. I mean, something smells beautiful, something feels beautiful, something arouses an emotion pleasurable in you. All of these are part of it.
How can a woman work with Babylon?
Simply to begin, maybe set up a little altar space, make offerings, your blood, your menstrual blood, wine, lukumi, rose-flavored lukumi, roses, or cultivate a rose. Use something as some kind of altar, some sort of a space for her, for you to experience or hold her energy. Speak to her with a mirror. I work with a mirror in this way, like a darkened mirror or, in candlelight, and speak to her while you're touching yourself, while you're arousing yourself, using like the incense of perfume to sort of awaken the senses more and expand, like diffuse that kind of awareness to something a bit beyond the flesh as well. And just, I mean, that's like kind of maybe a start, light the candle and make these prayers or petitions to her, speak to her, invite her. Yeah, she's a troublesome energy, but we are in times where we need troublesome energy in the world that's actually going to get stuff done, and we need to survive and we need to kind of evolve quickly.
Is it possible for anyone to work with Babylon? Or is Babylon one of those goddesses where she chooses you?
Well, I was chosen, but in my case, but I don't think that's the only way that happens or that one has this relationship. One can also open oneself to it. I kind of did that before the encounter for me. I think anyone can, but I think temperamentally maybe some people are more resonant with that than others, or it appeals to them more. I know there are other goddess archetypes, I don't like this language, that appeal to other people more. If what I say about Babylon, or if your understanding of Babylon speaks to you, like you feel that there is business for you there, something for you there, then I think you feel that and you know. There's a kind of sense of recognition. And I think that recognition is just the first step. And I can't really say too much about the whole journey. It's you do what it is to open yourself, to make that initial opening where she can get into the blood, into you. It feels like being punctured by a thorn or stung or something like this. There isn't really a female practice in magic because everything's been written by men for so long. And I never found something that made sense for me until I started intuitively working with my body and finding it through dance or these kind of things, movement. All my performances or my choreographies have been very much part of this progression of exploring different aspects of being a woman, the female mysteries, or having a body, being all these kind of things. And it relates to the work with Babylon, but maybe it doesn't have to be about Babylon, if you see what I mean. It is a way of going into yourself and opening up new vistas, opening up new dimensions for you to work within. So it's just that there wasn't really a female practice. There are a few texts of women's Taoist practice, like solo practice, and some tantric material, but it's mostly from a male perspective. So if you're looking to start working as a woman, there's almost nothing to be getting on. So for me, because there are no texts, I worked with body as the text, as the repository of knowledge. So I always just understood it as, here is where I talk to my ancestors. Here is where I, call the ghosts to speak to me or to bring me messages in dreams. I'm very interested in the relationship between the moving body and dream. A lot of my research is around that at the moment. With dreaming, this connection of the moving body suddenly becomes the body that is prone and sleeping and barely moving, or sometimes completely not moving, especially in some dream case, and in the reports of the witches flying to the Sabbath. So you have a still body, or a body with restricted or restrained movement or limited movement, and then this vivid, dynamic, emotional, colourful, strange world of dreams. And I'm very interested in this connection because it's still embodied, but only in a very, very tenuous sense, this connection between the world of images and the body that's no longer active.
Reading about one of your dances, you were dreaming, and then you took some of those dream images You incorporated it.
Well, there was a couple of them. The last one, the one I did in Luxembourg, and also the decoration of flowers. After the one in Luxembourg, I had a dream that night. I was very restless and sleepless most of the night. I had a very, very strange, vivid dream about my father, and it completely unlocked the next part of the work. So out of that dance, through the dream that came to me, like sort of oracular dream that came that night, like the door opened onto the next thing. So that was that kind of happens a lot, this resonance between the creative process and the dream. I've had like one of the decoration of flowers. I had also part of the dance was given to me. It fell out of a turtle, a tortoise or turtle in my dream. So I had this kind of spirit animal in a dream, and a book fell out of it. And I opened the book, and it had the name of the third part of the dance in it, and some like the writing and some gestures. And I was looking at it thinking, this is really important. Because one of those dreams that you're awakened because they're so strange, and the animal is more than just an animal, it's a spirit animal. So it was like, this happens, and I'm like, I must remember this. And the first thing you do when you wake up is just like, recapitulate, like don't move, just recapitulate everything in your head as clearly as possible, like see it all again, go through it again, experience it. So get that in the, like, you're awake but you're still lying in that sort of hypnagogic state between, you're sort of coming towards daylight and consciousness, and you try and put words to the images, because sometimes it's so hard to put words to things in dreams. And so it's to use this hypnagogic state. You're coming out of sleep, and you've left the dream, sort of leaving that kind of strange coloured world, and coming back towards, like, you hear birdsong or something, and to find a way to mesh words with those images. And then you wake up. Then you wake up and write them down. But you have to have a period where you're not moving. When you move or get up in the morning, it's like tearing that dream body away from you really abruptly. It just sort of like renders it and makes it very hard to access that. Maybe you'll just have a snatch, a glimpse of something, but you have much less of it. And that's because of this relationship between the dream and the movement. The moving body is like a body open to its environment. It's suddenly concerned with the diurnal consciousness and not with this occult consciousness of dreaming. So you need to have this time between where you allow the language and the images to find each other before you move. To build up as well a diary where you begin to find your own language through this process. And I think as a woman that's almost, it's imperative to do something like this, because that language of women's magic does not exist in the occult at the moment. You can't find it in books. So there are many useful things in books, and many of the, let's say, technical aspects of performing magic are applicable equally to men and women. But to actually access the deep female power that fuels magic and makes, say, spirit contact something you can maintain and not just something erratic that's like a bad electrical line. This is the work that you have to do, that there are no texts for. I think this is really important. We have access to this, and this is something that we have very easy access to as women, because I find with the menstrual cycle that you have very clear ways of working with dreams, very clear gates. This kind of clock enables this sort of a loop to be set up, a sort of a spiral or something, where you are continually interacting with the images that come to you in sleep and the images that come to you in the day. Daydreaming and the external world, this sort of appearances with the body. As a woman, a very interesting way to start getting back into how we find our own symbolism, how we start to discover how to write from the body, because we write from the dream images, which is something that responds to what the moving body has done.
I absolutely agree with you that there is nothing out there, at least not in Western occultism, that seems to apply to the feminine way of trying to connect with spirit. I remember reading an article a couple of years ago about how meditation even, being still and just, that's a very monastic, it's a very male-centered way of meditating. But for me, I could never do that. I have to walk when I meditate. And just having a bunch of dudes tell me, well, that's not really meditation then.
Yeah. It's
Right.
another kind of meditation, but it's not the only kind of meditation.
Exactly.
Yeah. Walking is brilliant. Walking is wonderful. Walking is what I do when I can't do anything else. Sometimes when I can't move or I can't think or I'm depressed, then just simply walking.
So one of the reasons why I've been doing these interviews is because, first of all, I want to learn, but also because I don't see a lot of female voices or female perspectives, at least in the public, about the occult world. And every time I do an interview, I get very, very, very nervous. Because it's sort of like, well, you know, I'm new at this. I have no technical things to contribute. The best I can do is wear like some fancy earrings, you know, and show up. I think a lot of women, they go through the imposter syndrome. They go through the, what do I have to contribute?
Yeah.
And I'm sure because you are a co-founder of a publishing house. I mean, that is like a media company, right?
It was an accident. I don't know how that happened. I think it is an issue for many, many, many women, this not being listened to and their voice not having any importance. And I know a lot of women that have said how if they say something, and this happened to me, like if I say something, it's not heard, and if a man says it, it's heard. It's happened more before, but I think it's a general thing that women's ideas are not taken seriously, but if a man says them, then, you know, that's it.
I love the advice that you've given about how women can start trying to find their voice again. It doesn't just have to be something like getting like some sort of like goetia, to just doing like all the rituals. You can just start with maybe putting a little bit more consciousness when you're doing yoga or like when you're doing belly dance.
I would start with much simpler spirit work. Connecting with the ancestors, connecting with your own ancestors and your own family, and attending to like the spirits in your environment, whether that's like the plants or the creatures, the birds and things that are around you, whether you're in a city or out in the country or whatever. So starting to tune into that level of spirit. So you start getting comfortable in this world. You start getting comfortable in understanding the world as conscious and living and dynamic, and you really see it like with robins. I've got a couple of robins that visit my garden, and they always like stop, they fly onto the same perch and they just look in the direction of the window. I think that's like, for me, this is the first step. Like this is all the preliminary work to encountering bigger spirits or stranger spirits.
It sounds like a hyper awareness of sensuality.
That's kind of my magic. That's what it's grounded in.
I love that.
You moved when you said that. You felt it. It's something you feel. It's already in you. Because the more we feel it, the more sensitive we become to it, and the more we heighten and exaggerate our ability to feel. So the more flamboyant we get, the more expressive we get, the more sexy we get, the more sensual we get. All of that goes along with this. And this is the level to work from, this hypersensitivity where even the spirits in the environment, you feel them brush against your skin and you know like, oh, he's there, it's there, he's come. This sense of awareness in the hairs, in the skin, it precedes even the visible appearance of the spirit. For me, it's about going into that dark consciousness, the kinesthesia and the synesthesias that come out of this all senses combining in this darker realm.
I love how you're talking about magic as a hyper awareness and appreciation and ecstatic experience of your body, of your five senses.
Well, it starts with your body, but it doesn't, like, your body doesn't end at your skin. So this is what, for me, the body just keeps going into wherever it is. My body is not limited to this. I'm in everything I see, so I can feel everything.
This conversation has been really amazing in terms of helping me understand just how important it is to not be so disconnected from the body, but also, you know, like, you don't have to see movement as punishment, as a way to lose weight or to do anything like that. It is definitely a gateway into spirit work. And, you know, like usually at this point I ask my guests, what are 3 songs that have affected your magic or that represent your magic? But for you, I was wondering, what are 3 pieces of choreography?
My piece at Sky Dancing Bolero. Pure expression of Shakti power, just absolutely ecstatic, euphoric, powerful, rhythmic, primal, just glorious, graceful, everything, emotional, everything is there. Anything by Hijikato Tatsumi. So few materials of him, of his work. His approach to the body is absolutely revolutionary for me. And it was his writings that intrigued me about Buto in the first place before I even saw it. And he was quite a different character to Kazuo Ono. He was a very crazy and hard, and Kazuo Ono very spiritual and soft and gentle. And I think Hijikata more like fire. And I like very much this. And the pictures of him and the small bits of footage we have of him moving and what he did with his dancers is just incredible. So he gets something very shamanic, very, very deep and very, very new all at the same time. The other would be anything by Ko Morobushi, who was my main Buto teacher, the person I trained with the most. His body is extraordinary. It's just a thing of wonder. He created such a body that was somehow, like I always imagined Nijinsky to be, like half animal and half god. They're like equally blended. There's something so like primeval and animal and raw about his movement, and then there was something like the fragility of the human as well, of the man and who he was, like when he was 68 when he died, and he was performing right until he died. So he was performing very hard and intense dances and very beautiful as 68. But at the same time, there's something just gloriously powerful and sexual, like a god energy about him, like the animus.
You mentioned that you're working on a new dance. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Working on 3 dances at the moment. One of them is called Pater, which is the next in the sequence of nymph dances. So I'm doing a kind of a series looking at the figure of the nymph, because it's an interesting subject to me. The nymph is also like an elemental goddess, a sort of a pre-classical, classical era nature spirit, or pre-classical goddess, potentially, more likely, and of place, so of caves and rivers and these kind of creatures. And nymph is also the female clitoris and the most sensitive, like highly sensate organ in the body. And it's something which is veiled, because the nymph is also a bride. So I'm interested in this idea of this unveiling, which is something very connected with the Babylon work, as well as the connection to the sex and the concealed nature, but it's kind of like a jewel within us, that it is so sensitive and allows us to have this knowledge of the world through it. So the nymph dancers are exploring who is the nymph, this goddess, this elemental, this sex, the actual sex, and the bride. And I'm interested in this in an apocalyptic sense, in an eschatological sense, in the sense that the orgasm is like on the level of the human body, in the level of that moment, a kind of apocalypse, a kind of a revelation, a kind of an ending, an unveiling, a tearing, a falling away of the persona that we carry in our everyday life to something much deeper, that's always living within this occulted body that we are all the time, but we write on the surface all the time. We have many narratives which are cultural, which are personal, that we that we are always writing on ourselves and with ourselves, but deep, deep, deep within, and you access this through orgasmic Babylon work, is this energy that is very, very pure and is kind of there, present all the time, and where our knowledge arises from, all knowledge. And so the nymph dances are about this particular mystery. So Pater is the one where I explore the father relationship. With the decollation of flowers, I explored my mother's and my female line relationship. And with Pater, I'm going to explore this sense of being a female in male space, this relationship with the father, this connection through the skin with the father, the other side of what I am, really. Next dance I'm going to be doing is in October, and that's for a Buto festival, and it was put together composers with dancers. The piece that I was randomly put with is called Holodomor, which means murder by starvation, which is what happened to Ukraine when the Soviet Union decided to starve them, all the peasants, and they were collectivizing, and it was like a huge, maybe 10 million people were killed because of what the state did to them. That's probably what I'll do first, because I'm very busy and I have to sort of break things up. So I'm continually doing like the Pater work as a sort of exercise, exploring through movement ideas, and kind of, I work quite slowly, but this is also, I like to work through the cycles, so I keep the diary, and as the dance progresses, the different choreographic ideas and images get written down and record the movement practice. So it gradually comes together and it will become something, and I will show it, but it probably won't be till the end of the year.
And how about for Scarlet Imprint? Are there any titles coming up soon?
Yeah, we've got a book by Frater Acher coming out next, which is called Holy Daimon, which is his research around the figure of the personal, like, Daimon, the Holy Daimon, and his working with his Daimon, and then exercises that you can do to make contact with your Daimon. We have another tarot pack coming out soon, which is beautiful, but I can't say too much about it. It's absolutely stunning, and very excited. And we've had this came to us before the Solar Bus Ball. The major arcana came to us, and we were like, this is amazing, do it. And it took 4 years. And the book of Peter and my essays. So we're calling that, we're sticking all our essays from the last 11 years in a book, and just the brazen vessel. So people can see like the progression. There's much less of my work in it than Peter's, because he's much more prolific writer than I am. But just to see the way our work relates to each other, the way that we are individual and have our own practices, but that they're always kind of in relationship with each other too. So it's just a kind of a book about a magical partnership, and the way that we are maintaining each our own work, as well as combining work as well. So
it's amazing. You have this energy to get all this done. Like, I can barely like brush my hair in the morning, you know.
It's been building, and now I'm like, look, I'm being carried by the momentum of it. It's like the currents are moving, and these things have to be done. And it also, when I got to 40, I just realized that my energy is so much, and there's only so much I can do with the rest of the time I have here, because you feel more like the tiredness or whatever. And I just decided, I'm just going to cut everything I don't need out of my life. Everything that I don't need, that holds me back, that it is in any way a distraction, and I'm just going to focus on getting some things done. So I got a lot more. I'm such a late developer. I've just got serious, like, in my mid-30s, and progressively since then, like, okay, time to work.
Well, I'm 39 right now, so I'm right there with you. Like, super late developer. In a way, I'm glad that I got into everything kind of late, because I don't think I had the emotional maturity, to be perfectly honest.
You have self-knowledge the older you are, I mean. Yeah, there's no hurry.
guys, I will definitely link down to all of Alkistis' projects below. And I'm just so happy that I got to talk to you, Alkistis.
Oh, it was lovely to talk to you. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh.